We have with us Shreevar Kheruka, the VC at Borosil Renewables, joining in on the show right now. Shreevar, great to have you on the show. Help us understand a little bit about the scope of opportunity for renewable energy players in the country such as yours.
Well, if you see the demand for solar, and I'm going to stick to solar because that's what we know best. Renewable has wind as well. But as far as solar is concerned, we expect, maybe about a doubling of the installations per annum from 7-8 gigawatts to 15-17 gigawatts over the next 2 to 3 years. Over and above that, there has been a PLI scheme which has been announced for manufacturing of various solar components in the country. And that has attracted a lot of interest from very large companies to manufacture the entire value chain. And that itself will also lead to improved cost and pricing, and therefore lower costs of solar electricity in the long run. It being also, I would say, a strategic importance, energy is a strategic important industry for the country. I think having the sources of production locally will also help for the future to delink from other countries.
Sure. If you could just help us understand a little bit in depth about what really is about the current demand supply scenario when it comes to solar glass in India, and what is the kind of scalable opportunity size that you have, say, next 10 or 8 or 10 years down the line?
So 10 years projecting is very difficult because the industry is very dynamic. But at the same time, I can say next 3 to 5 years. Like I mentioned before, 7 to 8 gigawatts is what India is installing per annum, which is likely to double. Now, for a 15 gigawatt kind of production of solar modules in India, you need roughly 3,000 tons per day of glass capacity. We are currently at about 450 tons per day, and we've already announced plans to go to 2,000 tons per day over the next 2.5 years. That expansion plan is very much in play for us. There are others also, there's competitors also who have announced some glass capacity expansion in the solar glass space. And the same, we can see in the other components for solar, whether it be solar cells or the back sheet, etc. There's lots of components, and there's been a lot of capacity expansion announced for all the solar components.
Hi, Alex joining in as well. Just sticking with this conversation, and you've taken us through the expectation on capacity and the fact that you're planning to increase capacity dramatically. I'm just trying to understand, a lot of this, of course, will have to do with new demand, the creation of new capacity. At what stage do you see replacement also coming into the picture, and how does that play out?
Yeah, so look, replacement in the solar market is at least 20 years. It's a 20-year module life. So I think if we see solar as an industry started in India only in 2015 plus, 2016 in a bigger way, let's call it. So therefore, I think it will take at least another 10, 15 years before we see replacement coming in as a big market. But yes, it's a very good question. It will definitely be there. But I think the next 10 years, we'll see more or less new demand coming in. With the COP26 announcements to be energy neutral, to be carbon neutral, made by India as well as other countries, solar is really the cheapest form of power. So lots of new capacity across the world is going to come up in the solar space.
Now, I want to understand the dynamics for you as a business as well. You're obviously looking to achieve scale, and you have quite a bit of capacity that will go up as well. Help us understand the realizations that you have on solar glass, and what are the factors that are affecting the cost side of it, the raw material side of it?
Yeah, so as far as the realization, we are today, totally dominated as an industry, solar glass I'm speaking, from China. So China controls, I think, 97% of the world capacity for solar glass. And they're even on that capacity, they're expanding very rapidly. So realizations are dependent on the Chinese pricing. They set the pricing, and the others have to follow. Coming to the cost side, the costs are, in the last 6 months, as everybody's been talking, inflation has come into play in raw material. Things like soda ash have become more expensive. And gas, natural gas, which is a key, fuel that we use, has also increased substantially in cost. So far, the Chinese have increased the prices by maybe 15% or thereabouts to compensate for the extra costs. And we've seen that being passed on to the end customer. Over and above that, there has been also a really big impact on availability of product because of the container shortage, which again, everyone's aware of. So containers are in very high demand and short supply. And that has also increased the cost somewhat of shipping from China to India. So realizations are up maybe about 20% if I have to look at overall from the long-term average, which in the context of the inflation that's happening is, I would say fairly reasonable.
I'm just trying to understand, considering what you're saying in terms of the requirement or the dependence on China, import duty is something that you're watching, I'm sure, very, very closely. Is that something that is going to impact you, is impacting you already? How is that affecting your operating margins?
So as far as the import duty, what the government has announced from 1st of April 22, that's a basic customs duty on solar cells and modules, which is not to do with solar glass, frankly. However, that will definitely spur demand for us, because if you see, there'll be a lot of production of these modules. Today, 50 to 60% of these modules, maybe more, is being imported from China. Eventually, when these duties come into play, this is going to spur domestic manufacturing of the modules, which means that end of day, there'll be more customers wanting glass, and obviously we will be there to supply the glass. So the import duties which enhance Indian production of solar components will certainly increase our demand, and that's a lot of the reason why we have been aggressive in expanding our capacity.
That actually makes sense in terms of the creation of the value chain, Shreevar. I'm just trying to understand in terms of the capacity, and you just spoke about the capacity again. How are you going to fund that capacity? Is there going to be an element of debt? How much are you planning to raise, if so?
Yeah, look, the funding of the capacity will be, over the next 2 years, with a mixture of internal accruals, some equity and debt. As far as debt is concerned, we are today debt-free as an organization, and we already have lines of credit with banks, although not utilized yet. So we have, we need about 2,000 crores totally of capex, which we need to do, and about, I would say, 700 to 800 crores will come from debt. The balance will be internal accruals and equity raise. So with the ratios that are today prevalent in our company, I think raising the debt would not be too much of a challenge. And we already had lines of credit. So we feel reasonably confident that fundraising for the expansion would not be too much of a challenge.
Shreevar, you've spoken about the industry dynamics. You also mentioned that there are large players that are entering the value chain. I don't know how. So help us understand the share of the pie that you enjoy, and whether or not you're going to have to contend with competition in the near future.
Look, as far as the share of the pie is concerned, glass as a component in a solar module, just to give you some numbers, is about 10 to 12%, anywhere between 10 to 12%. And the module as a share of the solar, let's call it installation of the solar park, is roughly 50 to 55%. So of any overall solar installation, when they talk about 4 crores or 3 crores a megawatt, glass would be about 5% of that. So it's a fairly small, I would say, component of the overall, solar project. That being said, there have been many announcements of competition coming in, and that's the normal case in any industry. All industries in any vibrant economy are competitive, and I think the competition really helps, drive prices down, or drives innovation, and therefore drives pricing or improves quality. So, competition is just the normal state of life, and that's to be expected.
All right, Shreevar, thanks so much for joining in. And for you specifically, I hope that you have a nice and sunny winter, and all the best for the future.
Thank you.
All right.